Today on the podcast, I had Chase Bertoni. Chase is a part of the Real Freedom community here, and man, he is crushing it. He's been wholesaling in multiple markets, lately Ohio, and I can't wait for you guys to hear more about his story, how he's overcome fear, what's really working for him. We'll deep dive one of his best deals, and we'll talk about what lead channels are working for him right now, what has been the biggest reason for his success in the last 6 months especially, and we talk all things from social media gurus to how to break through in financial freedom through wholesaling. Chase is a top-level closer and an absolute killer when it comes to doing virtual deals. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. If you're interested in applying to the Real Freedom community, please shoot me a DM at Real Ryan Weimer on Instagram, and we'll see if you're a good fit to take your business to the next level. Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast with your host, Ryan Weimer. Today, I've got Chase Bertoni with me. Chase, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Chase is a Real Freedom community member. I am so stoked to have him on the show just to talk about his journey and how he's absolutely crushing it in Ohio and doing wholesaling virtually. Chase, what's your secret, man?
I don't know, man. I think the community more than anything.
Yeah.
I guess just consistency is what I'd say. That's I think what's helped the most throughout my career. So
Well, on this show, we always like to start with the best stuff first. So
sure.
Let's talk about your most wonderful failure.
Okay. I really don't feel like I have like some big grandiose failure, but I would say fundamentally was for most of my early career, I just was too scared to spend any money on the business or like grow things or expand things just out of fear. I would honestly count that as like probably my biggest failure. I think that set me back some years by just, the fear of spending any money or doing anything. It just set me back. So
Okay. So let's dive into that a little bit because I
Sure.
think fear, it's a very human thing and we all go through it. And even as you do more deals and as you reach financial freedom and get the things that you need, there's like the next boss,
Yeah.
right? So to speak. So like there's a new element of fear and new challenges and new growth. So what was it, do you think, about like that first step or the first time facing fear that you were able to overcome it, and walk me through like what those feelings were of the fear?
I think early on, I was like one of the early adapters of the text blast marketing. And so back then it was a pretty cheap thing. Like if you remember some of the early softwares, they were pretty cheap and wasn't much regulation or anything like
Right.
that.
Text messaging.
Yeah.
Sellers.
And I think it got more expensive with time, and there were times where I would shut it down out of fear of like, I can't spend that much per month on this or this, that, and the other. And then someday I was just like, this is the one thing that's consistently providing deals. So why not just commit to saying I'm going to do this every month, no matter what? And that's what I did. And so, that in turn, started giving me actual consistent deal flow as opposed to like, one every couple of months or, whatever.
So you're wholesaling deals in Ohio right now. Okay. So what even got you into wholesaling to begin with? Like before texting, how'd you discover it? What were you doing?
Yeah, that was, I actually learned about it in high school. So I was probably 17 or
Okay.
18. And I just didn't, I knew when I was towards the end of my high school career that I wasn't really interested in the traditional route. Like I didn't want to go to college. I mean, it wasn't something that I didn't want to do. I just didn't have any interest that I felt like was worth spending the money to pursue it.
Right.
I just started looking into like, everything that makes money and was just like, what can I do after that makes sense for me? And everywhere that I read, it was like a large percentage of self-made millionaires are through real estate. So that's why I was like, well, I'm going to just find something in this field and pursue that. And I honestly don't know where I found wholesaling, to be honest. Because I never really considered being a realtor or anything like that. I just remember always being fixated on wholesale. I don't know where that came from, honestly, but I just remember at the early stages, I was going on Craigslist and trying to find properties like fixer-uppers on there.
Yep.
And I found this one, and I called, and it was a lady named Rebecca Jensen out of Salt Lake, and she actually was probably one of my first mentors because she was actually wholesaling that property.
Oh,
And
very cool.
I didn't know that, but I called her like pretending to buy it, or whatever, and she kind of educated me on what was going on and what she was doing. And so I guess she's kind of the, catalyst for why I even wholesale, is because she kind of told me about it or taught me about it. And I just didn't really take it serious because I was a high schooler and was kind of just messing around, but I was trying it. And yeah, and then years later, after I graduated and went to college anyways and dropped out because I didn't like it, and it was all stuff that I knew was going to happen. I eventually was like, well, let me actually give this wholesaling thing a try, and I took like a 30-day, like I need to do this, full steam for 30 days and let's see what happens. And it was literally on like the 30th or 31st day I closed my first deal. And it wasn't for a ton of money, but it was definitely like proof of concept.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just never looked back from there. I mean,
Yeah.
I've loved it pretty much ever since. So
What year was that?
that was 2017, end of 2017,
Okay.
I believe.
So we always talk about like the first deal changing your brain chemistry forever, right? Because
Yeah.
it's an idea
Mhm.
before it becomes real. And it's not really real until the money hits your bank account. And I've talked about this before, but like for my first deal, it took me 8 months. And I'll never forget, like I was in my office as an engineer and I like pulled up my phone and looked into my bank account and there was a wire for like $11,000 there. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my
You just can't
gosh.
believe it.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
it's
like,
not real.
this would have taken me how many months to make? And I just like made that like in my spare time. Of
Yeah.
course, it took me 8 months, but still, like,
Right.
I can make money outside of a normal job. And so
Mhm.
it was like a drug, honestly.
Oh,
Like I was
yeah.
completely hooked.
Yeah. No, that's exactly the feeling for me too. Cause God bless my parents, but I was living at home after dropping out, and they let me stay with them. They said take your time, do what you need to do, but like you need to go back to school or you need to go get a job. And because I was doing kind of nothing after I
Yeah.
dropped out, just like I was selling stuff on eBay, I was doing whatever to kind of like pay my bills.
Yeah.
The small amount that I had, but yeah, I just remember that first one. I think it was like $4,800 or something like that. But it was more money than I'd ever had in my bank account in my whole life. So I was like, I'm
You're like,
rich.
I'm rich.
Yeah, no, exactly. And my now fiance had actually left for college, and I remember prior to that I was so stressed about like not ever going to be able to see her because it's so expensive, and how am I going to come up with a couple grand to just be able to leave and go see her, whatever. She's in like 8 hours away in Washington. And as I think it was like literally the next day I left and just went to go see her because I had the money and, I could. So yeah, no, but it's like a drug. Like you just want to keep going. Like and I think not too long after that, I did a really big one, which enabled me to move out of my parents' house and, go move to Boise. So,
Okay. Right
yeah.
on. And then you drop out and then you're kind of spinning your wheels trying to figure out like what you're going to do with your life, right? And I
Yeah.
think this is like really speaks to like males age 20 to sometimes 50 or more. Like some people
Yeah.
never really figure out like what their calling is or what they want to do or ways to achieve financial freedom to really live the life that they want to live. You mentioned this like 30-day challenge that you did. What was like the catalyst? What caused you to really like, hey, I'm going to go for this in 30 days? Because a lot of people, going back to the fear part, like a lot of people would just keep floundering,
Mhm.
right? There was something inside you that was like, nope, I'm going to go at this for 30 days and see what happens.
I think, like, I will preface by saying I was probably a little lucky because there is definitely a luck element involved when you're doing the type of marketing that I was doing, which was just calling random people on Zillow and FSBO and kind of just lowballing people. I mean,
Yeah.
that was genuinely what I was doing.
Uh-huh.
So I will say there's a luck element involved there. But that being said, the catalyst was genuinely, like I said, my now fiance moving. And so I think that created a different type of fear where I was like, it was like a fear of losing that person in my life. And I just knew like the only way I was going to be able to do the things that I wanted to do was with this business because I saw other people making the kind of money that I wanted to make. And so I said, okay, well, I know I've either got to go back to school or get a job or I'm going to get kicked out. So I need to like just, 30 days, I'm going to just give it everything I've got for 30 days. No fear. I'm going to wake up every day. I'm going to call until I cannot call anymore. And it works. It does work. Old fashioned cold calling. It works. You just got to, like I said, give it pretty much everything you got. And eventually the deals will come. And then you can kind of use those funds to, lessen the workload a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it works. So
Yeah. And I think it's so important. Pain is such a powerful motivator, and it's always used in a negative context.
Mm-hmm.
The whole reason I got into wholesaling was because I had pain in my W-2 job.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to fly places and they were telling me like, oh no, you can't come home yet until the project's done. And I was like, over
Mm,
holidays and everything. And I'm
mm.
like, if I didn't have that pain though, there would be no reason for me to get outside of my comfort zone. And so I think if you're listening to this and you're in a moment of pain right now or moment of uncertainty, use that. Like, it's so valuable, because fast forward, when you're doing stuff and you're making deals, there are points when you feel comfortable and you don't have the pain.
Mhm.
And then your effort levels can decrease when you're in that zone of being comfortable. So you do your first deal, and what happens after that? Like, how long to your second deal, and take
So
me along.
I think my first deal was in September, like I said, of 2017. My second one, I want to say, was November,
Okay.
and I think it might have closed like beginning of December. But we got it under contract in November, and the first deal was from a pre-foreclosure just on Zillow. And I actually had a buddy that lived up here. He went and knocked on their door, but the guy was outside mowing his lawn. So he just walked up to him and started a dialogue. And that's how we got the first one. Like I said, it wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough, to proof of concept. Same thing on the second one. It was another pre-foreclosure, but this one was huge because the property was vacant. It was really gross. It was like animals living in there. It was nasty.
A truly motivated
Yeah,
seller.
truly
Yes.
motivated seller. It was a divorce situation. Both of the occupants just fled the state. They didn't really want anything to do with the house. So I reached out to the one guy, tried calling him every way possible. No numbers working. I eventually messaged him on Facebook, and he was on Facebook. So we did the deal through Facebook Messenger. He went to a payphone to call me to make sure I was legit because he didn't have a phone that was working. He just had Messenger. He gave me the ex-wife's contact information. We reached out to her. She had no problem signing because she just wanted to be done with it pretty much. Yeah, and I think it was a $40,000 assignment on that one after making like $4,000
4-0 was
Yeah.
$40,000 was
40.
your second deal.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we actually ended up giving some of the assignment back to the seller because once we got through like all their taxes and everything, they were walking away with like next to nothing. So we
Okay.
gave them like $5,000 or something like that, or $10,000. But yeah, he was just stoked that he wasn't going to have a foreclosure on his record more than anything. And, we were stoked to make money, obviously. And
Yeah.
but that was the, check that made it possible for me to move out of my parents' house and,
Yeah.
go off on my own. So yeah, that was the second one. And it was shortly after. And then after those two, we were still doing the Zillow like pre-foreclosures, but we
Yep.
started to get into actually MLS offers.
Yeah.
It was back when that was kind of a viable wholesale strategy.
Okay.
So
one step back here, like, because we gloss over this.
sure.
By the way, I also got started calling Zillow for rents
Oh, okay.
and asking, hey, I saw your property was for rent, but have you ever thought about selling it? And I think this strategy still works. Like,
Yeah.
you can still go on Zillow for rents. You can sort on less than median price point for rent. You can call for sale by owners on Zillow. You can look up properties on Craigslist and call them, right?
Even
And
the pre-foreclosures and auctions still work too.
yes, 100%.
A little
Now,
tougher,
but here's the thing, Chase. Like, how do you handle all the rejection? Because I'm sure when you're calling all these people and we just talk about it like it's a casual thing and people are cussing you out and whatever, like there's got to be, how did you handle that?
yeah, I would say I was not so great at handling it when I started, but that's with anything. You kind of suck at stuff until you practice it long enough to get good. And I think that's the same thing with handling rejection. Of course, you're going to suck at the beginning. It's going to be really hard mentally. It's going to be hard, in a lot of ways that you probably don't expect. And, it just sucks. I think at some point you have to understand, like, hey, this is going to suck, but we're going to do it because the end result is what we're looking for. And so that small moment of suck is not going to deter me from my end goal. And that's kind of the way even to this day, I still look at it, because there's definitely days, especially in this business, where you hear a lot of not only just the rejection, but a lot of the crappiest parts of people's lives. It can be really depressing, but it's the end result that we're paying attention to. And
Yeah.
so keep the focus there, and it becomes much easier because you're not really focused on this guy calling me every name under the sun. Instead, you're focused on, the next guy that you talk to who's going to be a motivated seller, who's going to, put money in your bank. So,
Okay. So I totally agree. I love that, by the way, because it's like there's so many people that they do their second or third call, somebody cusses them out and they're like, nope, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Right. What is it that you think helps them understand that, hey, to an extent, like this is just a numbers game?
Mhm.
What's like maybe something you use to help your mindset there of pushing through those initial friction points?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I always just, maybe I'm a little broken, but I just focus on the end. So like I don't really care if all these people are going to be mean to me or whatever. Like you're going to have that in your normal life if you
Right.
don't pursue this. Like let's say you work in retail or even not even in retail, you work a corporate job. You might have a boss who's, not nice to you or says mean things, and it's like you're going to have that kind of friction in your life regardless. Why not do it in a way that, can provide yourself financial freedom?
I love that. We call that choose your hard,
There you
right?
go. Yeah.
You can stay in the status quo, and you can, you have a boss that you don't like and that controls your time and schedule, and your wage is set, and you can only get little incremental raises every year or whatever it is. Um, but if you choose your hard of serving yourself and doing this for you, for
Mhm.
your future and your freedom and your family's future, it's so much more powerful. And I think just that premise alone helped me push through those initial days of rejection. Because as an engineer, like I was terrible at talking to anybody,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so
Well, and that's fair because it was kind of the same thing for me. I was never like a super articulate person or like very good at customer service or any of those things. I mean, most of the jobs I had in high school, I was fired from or quit or whatever. And it was mostly because of that, because I just hated dealing with people. And now I love it. It's the opposite because you learn to love those texts that you get after a deal is done or those calls you get where they're just thanking you up and down. And it just makes you feel better about, okay, I'm doing this for a reason. It's not just about the money. It's also about the impact that I can have on these communities. So
love it. Okay, so you do your second deal, then you start doing some MLS stuff, and is that still in Idaho at this point?
yeah, so
Okay,
all this was still in Idaho up to this point. It was still kind of virtual. It's kind of funny. It's always been like that for me. But because I was living in Bellevue with my parents, and then after that second deal closed, I moved to Boise, and then we were kind of just looking at all of Idaho for the
okay,
most part. But yeah, we would just make as many offers as we could. So it was same thing, still a numbers game. We were still like trying to call pre foreclosures and stuff, but that did take a backseat because the MLS stuff started working really well. We were having like an offer a week accepted.
wow. And what was like your general? Did you have like a saved search set up, and then you would just offer like 60% of the list
Um,
price?
yeah, we used what was that? We used a software. It was called Happy Investor.
Okay,
It wasn't really a software. It was more like a website that just categorized all of the potential fixer uppers. And we would just go through that list and make sure that the numbers made sense. We'd double check comps, whatever. And then, yeah, we would just pretty much go on the MLS, find the realtor's email, and just email offers and just let them know, hey, it's cash, close in 14 to 21 days, whatever. And yeah, we'd get like an accepted offer a week, or they would call us and be like, hey, can you come up at all, whatever. And we'd say no, but keep us in mind if
right,
things change. And we had a lot of those ones where they'd sit on the market for 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, and then they'd call, okay, yeah, we'll take your offer.
right.
So yeah, we did that like, we did quite a bit of that first year. So I think all of 2018 was just MLS offers.
Wow. Okay. And the confidence to do that statewide is just if I'm offering at a low enough number, I know it has to be a deal. Like obviously you still
Mhm.
have your due diligence period after the contract is signed.
Yeah, well, we just stuck to our numbers super hard, and think at the time my partner was an ex contractor, so
Okay.
his ability to estimate was very useful too, because he could look at pictures and know, okay, this is probably going to be 40 grand or 50 grand or
Right.
60 grand, whatever. And so we would kind of utilize that. Nowadays, you can kind of take a square footage number and multiply it by whatever the cost is per area.
Yep.
So that makes it a little easier once you're a little more knowledgeable. But back then, I had no idea what I was talking about. So it was just easier to get a second opinion, and that's kind of what my partner did there. But yeah, we just knew as long as we stuck to our formula and we stuck to our numbers, like even if it took us a little longer to sell, like we could sell them for sure.
Okay. And then at what point 2019 rolls around, and at what point did you
Yeah,
notice it not being viable?
honestly, 2019 was an interesting year because it was mostly my laziness. I think that year
Okay.
I had gotten to the point of comfortability with the money coming in that I was
Yep.
like, well, I can half-ass this a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of what I did. I just, full transparency. For the most of 2019, it was like I might work for a couple weeks, do a deal, and then like take a couple months off. And I just kept doing that. And 2020 rolled around, and that was a wake-up call because we had COVID and the
Yep.
shutdowns, and that pretty much killed MLS offering. And looking back, had I, really just gave it my all for those 2 years, I probably would have made, quadruple the amount of money that I did, and I would have
Yeah.
been in a better position. But hindsight's always 2020. But yeah, once 2020 rolled around and everything shut down, MLS offering was pretty much dead after that because of the influx of people here and just the craziness of all that. I don't think anybody does MLS really anymore nationwide. I could be wrong, but I doubt that's anybody's main strategy anymore.
We see people in our mastermind occasionally do the MLS strategy, but it's more in markets that you can turnkey in. So for those of you that don't know what a turnkey is, it's where they're buying a property that needs a little bit of work, and they'll buy it below market value. It's usually like in the 80 to 150K price range. They fix it up and it might be worth like 180 to 200. You can put a renter in there that rents for 1,700, 1,800 a month. And then they will sell that property to like a turnkey investor that's just going to buy it, everything fixed up, renter in place.
Right.
And then they'll make the spread on that. And so really only in like those lower price point markets is a viable strategy now. There's people that still try to do it. And I get calls from wholesalers that are just starting or whatever, and they'll send me stuff that's on the MLS. And I'm like, guys, I appreciate that you're trying and taking action. So that's first and foremost, is you're on the right track. But your dollar per hour going off market versus going on market is so much higher. Now, it's way more work to get a deal, but once you get a deal, it's worth 10x as much as anything that you could find on market. Because I do think you can go on the MLS, you can still lowball right now.
Oh, yeah.
And you can probably make 5K a deal. But the problem is you're going to create so much more work for yourself on the back end trying to dispo an MLS property. The first question you're going to get from buyers is like, well, this is on the MLS. What's the situation? Right? Like, my guard's up. This is weird. I don't want to buy an MLS deal. So it's just your dollar per hour activity going on the MLS is so much less. And I know that that's hard for people to really wrap their mind around.
Right. I think if you're not in the business, it's hard to understand. But once you've dealt with enough buyers, you start to get it. And that strategy, I think, changed so much over the years just because back in 2018, 2019, a lot of investors just didn't look at the MLS. I don't know why, but a lot of guys, or they did, but if you were getting it, 40, 50, 60, even 100 grand below what they had it listed at, it was a substantial enough discount that they're like, okay, obviously this is
For sure
a good one. But still, same questions were to be asked. What's wrong? Why didn't it sell on the MLS? Whatever. So
you go through this, we won't quite call it a midlife crisis, 2020. No, just struggle that every entrepreneur goes through, right? Is like, as the market changes, as situations changed, the same thing happened to us in 2022 when interest rates changed. We got kicked in the teeth big time. And so we're always evolving into a different way to get deals, a different way to dispo deals. How did you change things after that COVID moment?
We had done, I guess I didn't mention, but a small amount of texting in 2019. And we had really good success with it. It was just hand texting. So we would find those same pre-foreclosure leads or auction leads on Zillow or even FSBO, and we just text them, have a conversation. And because some people, for whatever reason, just prefer that modem of communication as opposed to like a call or whatever. So yeah, towards the tail end of 2019, we'd started implementing that a little bit. And once we realized MLS was just not going to happen anymore, we definitely took some months off because it just seemed like everybody stood still for a while and nobody was doing deals. Probably like those first few months of the shutdown where we were really like, nobody was doing anything. And thankfully, my financial position, I was able to just kind of hang out. Yeah, once things started to open back up again and business started moving again, we really started to go in with the texting and taking that a lot more serious. And I think we did our first software in 2020 where we spent money, pretty substantial amounts of money, buying lists, texting said lists, and like converting those deals. But that also came with a whole new set of challenges that were very different from what we were used to because we were doing a lot of cold outreach at this point, and everything before was like warm, lukewarm, hot.
Right.
And the stuff that we were reaching out to now was people there was no indication we were going to reach out to them, and we're just randomly texting them. So definitely had our fair share of pissed off people. But yeah, that was like the birth of our kind of, main marketing channel that we utilize still to this day, which was the mass texting.
Gotcha. Man, those were the the glory days of texting, right?
Yeah, they were.
That's when, do you remember who you were using?
Probably batch leads.
Okay. Because we used Lead Sherpa
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, those
they,
were like the two options back
yeah.
then was batch leads or lead Sherpa.
And then coincidentally, because both of them got too big too fast, they
Yeah,
both like got shut down
pretty much instantly.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like less than a year we were onto a different software.
Yeah.
So
And then just like anything, a new player emerges, and
yeah,
like we've
sure.
been going to different providers as the years go along. But there's this point now, going back to your most beautiful failure, where you were taking months off with the texting. I assume it was working for you, but there was still like an upfront spend.
Yeah, and I don't even know that it was because I think I was even still paying for everything, but just not actively working.
Okay.
It was more so not wanting to buy new lists, not wanting to like spend above and beyond what I already was,
Yeah.
which would have just netted more deals. There's
Right.
no doubt about it because it would have been a little bit more work, like a little more time behind the computer, responding to people or calling people, and a little bit more money, like maybe another $1,000 to $2,000 a month. But it was again that fear of like money hoarding and just protecting what you've got. And it's like, no, you got to be willing to spend to make more and to 10x, you know? So,
Yeah. And I think that's such a hard thing when you're starting out or you have any kind of setback. The marketing budget is the one thing that it's the easiest lever to pull to
mhm,
like shut off because you want to save immediate money. But the problem with that is it's the lifeblood of all your leads, right? And you can't get a deal without leads.
mhm,
And so sure, you can limit your marketing budget or shut it off for a while and then go into your database of existing leads and like try to get deals out of there. But eventually, like that's going to catch up to you. And then the problem is when you restart the lever again and you restart the spend, it takes a few months of ramp to
mhm.
get. We've talked about this, but real estate is an emotional asset for people. The sales
Yep.
cycle is long from the
Mhm.
time that a lead first comes in the database or any kind of cold outreach. It can be 30, 60, 90 days till we get it under contract or longer. And then it can be 30, 60, 90 days after we get it under contract to get paid.
Yeah.
Right. And
Mhm.
so that's the problem is like every time it's not just like a light switch.
Right.
It takes months of ramp up to get
It's
back to where
very
you are.
rare you're going to find a lead that comes in and they sign that day and it's
Yes.
done. And like, no, it's very, most of the time they come in, you gotta have to build some rapport with them. You gotta spend some time with them. Most people's timeline, they're gonna need 60 days before they can even start moving.
Yep.
Especially if they occupy the property. So yeah, there's a lot of factors there. I've noticed every time I've shut down my marketing, it's like past, present, it's always a negative. Even if it's like I probably shouldn't be spending. No, you just keep it going. Because even if it's like if things are getting a little tight, if you stop spending money, you're gonna make it worse because
Yes.
that deficit just grows. Longer time to your next paycheck.
Yeah. And
So,
and I don't think this is why I'm such a pro towards start with outbound.
mhm.
If you start with inbound, like you're going to run out of
Yeah,
budget quick,
yeah.
especially if you have,
Expensive.
yeah, it's expensive. You have no sales skills.
Mm,
So like your chances of converting a deal, you're pretty much only going to get the laydowns,
right.
right? And
Right.
those are
1 in
the-
20, maybe.
maybe 1 in 20 contracts,
Yeah.
right? So you're talking like 1 in 300 or 400 leads,
Yeah.
right?
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money for inbound leads. And so I think, yes, outbound is the best way to start just because it's a lower barrier to entry and you learn at the same time. Now,
Yeah.
there's people like RJ Bates that disagrees with me, that does nationwide PPC, and he thinks that you don't have to get your teeth kicked in. Yeah, RJ, I'm talking to you. I disagree. But yes, the best way to learn in this business and to build up resiliency, I think,
Mm.
is outbound. You get the
Yeah.
reps.
I think that's important because if you only, let's say you do have a budget because you make decent money in your job and you can spend a couple grand a month on or inbound, I think you don't build up the thick skin that you need because even on inbound leads, there's been times where I've gotten people pissed off at me and it's like, you wanted to talk to me.
Right.
So that'll still happen. And if you don't have that kind of experience, you're just going to bumble it and lose. And oftentimes the people that are pissed off like that, there's a reason. And it's not really at you. They're just deflecting it onto you. So some of those ones where they're real pissed off for whatever reason, like those can be some of the best deals. You just have to know how to navigate that situation.
Yeah.
And you learn that from outbound because you're talking to a lot of people that don't want to talk to you. So
Exactly. And it teaches you how to ask the right questions to see if they are a qualified lead too.
Mhm.
So you get really good at like, what do people say to indicate that there's some level of motivation and that they might be willing to sell a property at a discount?
right.
Because when you're first talking to people, you have no idea what a motivated seller sounds like. They kind of
Mhm.
all sound the same.
Right.
And then when you get that person that's in a foreclosure that, right, is like, I need to sell now. I want to
Right.
get rid of this thing. You're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah,
I
there's
just,
little key things that they'll say. They may not outright say what they mean, but they'll start to say certain words that you're just like, oh, my ears just perked up. What'd you say there? You know?
yeah,
And that's, I think, again, that just comes from the reps. Like if you're not doing the reps, you're just not going to learn.
yeah, absolutely. So COVID happens. You're doing text message marketing. At what point do you pivot to Ohio?
So that was some years later because we stuck in Idaho for a while, up until last year was like my first almost full calendar year doing Ohio. This year will be my first for sure full calendar year. I want to say we started in Ohio in like March of
Okay.
last year. Yeah, but we just did that because we felt that, or at least I felt that the saturation in like investors and competition and stuff, it wasn't worth the cost per deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that I could accomplish the same thing with more volume, maybe less money per deal, but more volume elsewhere. And I'd been doing virtual most of my career, even though it was comfortable because it was still in Idaho and it was still familiar. I was like, you know what the heck, I can try it in somewhere else. And I think at the time I just Googled like hottest real estate markets for this upcoming year or whatever. And one of the ones on there was Cincinnati, Ohio. And I looked at the population and I saw there was a lot of people in that little metro there. So yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see. Because the other problem I had was data. I felt like I would run out of data to use in Idaho, even though it's probably not true. That's what it felt though. So
And when you say data, we just mean like lists of
yeah,
sellers to contact.
yeah.
What are some of your favorite lists to hit?
I love Tired Landlord. I
Okay.
feel like there's a lot of laydowns in Tired Landlord. I don't know why. I just do. Like if they've owned it for 30 years and it's worth the same as what they paid 30 years ago and they're just pissed off and it's in bad shape, they're just like, what? Just take it.
Yeah.
They just want to be done. And a lot of these guys, they own, the real Tired Landlords they like own like 3 or 4. We're not talking the guys that own 50 or 100 because they've got plenty of money. They can do what they need to do with the property. But the guys that have 3 or 4 and they kind of mismanaged them and
Right.
they're just pissed off. They just want it gone. They don't really care.
Yeah. They usually self-manage,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're probably rents are far below market rent. So they're
Exactly.
giving,
Yep.
they might be renting to friends or family. They might be
Mhm.
renting to,
And they don't want to deal with that situation, getting them out. No, they just want to be done. They want to walk away.
exactly. Like the renters have caused them so much emotional pain over
Yeah,
the years
yeah.
that they're just done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's also not a intrinsically like highly motivated list that everybody would target, like
Mhm.
pre-foreclosures,
Sure.
vacants, tax delinquent. Like those are the big ones that scream financial motivation, financial motivation.
Mm.
But Tired Landlords does require a little bit more tact, and so I'm sure your skill
Yeah.
can shine through there.
I think so too. I think most of the landlords too, they're smart. They have multiple properties unless they just like inherited them or whatever, which is something we do see. But a lot of them, they intentionally invested money for a reason and they're smart. So they're not just going to be, they're not idiots is what I'm
Right.
saying, but it's more so just they have more motivation than you would expect is how I would put it. Especially if you stack another motivation on that, like tax delinquent or vacant and whatever it may be. So they own that property and it was a rental, somebody trashed it, now it's just sitting there and they're just like, well, what do I do now? Those are probably some of my favorite deals that we've done are exactly that, where they've just they had a family friend in there or a family member, even they trashed it and now it needs like 50 grand in work and they just don't have that to just dump on a property.
Yeah.
So yeah, those can be really good.
At Offer Now Idaho, we're looking to hire A players to run our organization and help us grow our business.
Absolutely. And it's not going to be easy, but what in life is? You can choose your hard, you can choose to be poor, you can choose to be rich. They're both hard. Would you rather work for a company that has your best interests in mind and wants to push you to be the best version of yourself? Where you actually can give back to the community and have a tangible impact in people's lives? Our motto is providing freedom to our team members, our community, and ourselves through real estate.
The whole reason Offer Now Idaho was created, I was a mechanical engineer, and I was just a cog in the wheel. At the end of the day, I was just a number. I got laid off once. I got passed up for a promotion multiple times, even though I was already doing half of the role plus my own. I wanted to be able to control my own destiny and impact others around me without having the handcuffs of a corporation and deal with corporate politics. Getting passed up for that promotion, already doing the work, I remember just feeling, am I really going to do this for the next 30 years of my life? I need to start taking control now. I need to go start something. I need to go build something that will attract other like-minded people that are seeking that. The ability to work remote, right? That want to be able to have an unlimited ceiling on what they can earn. And the results that they get have a direct impact on what they get compensated. You can't get that in a corporate job. Right now, we have a $3,000 referral program. If you know somebody that's looking for a new role, we will pay you $3,000 once that person is hired by us and they hit their 90-day mark. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a new job or looking to change their life, shoot me a DM at RealRyanWeimer on Instagram.
Let's get it.
So I think you're the perfect person to give this advice for somebody who is either starting out or maybe they are struggling a little bit in a certain market, or maybe it's not even struggle. They're just like wondering, should I go to a different market? How should they be thinking about choosing? Because there's a lot of factors that go into it. What would you tell somebody that is trying to decide between markets?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say as a newbie, for me, it was really easy to choose something familiar and comfortable. And so familiar and comfortable to me was Idaho.
Right.
My first deal was in Boise, which I had visited on occasion throughout my high school and everything. But our second deal was Twin Falls. And then I would say we had a pretty heavy focus in Twin Falls after that. And Twin Falls is my hometown. So that was very comfortable for me. A very small town, not a ton of people there. But it was easy to go and, pick a few deals out of there and kind of build up some confidence. And then from there to expand outwards was much easier. So find what's comfortable for you. If you can drive down the street and go look at that property in person and shake hands with the guy and build rapport, I think that's really positive for your first few experiences. And as you get more experienced and more confidence, then you can do stuff virtually and get away with that. But it's a lot harder to do that if you don't know what you're talking about and you try to do these deals virtually. I think it is tougher. It's not impossible, but it is tougher.
Okay. What if I'm in like a really high priced, super competitive market? Let's say I want to start wholesaling, but I'm in like a major metro. Like I'm in an LA, I'm in a San Diego, a San Francisco, a Miami, New York, Chicago.
Yeah. I'm still a genuine believer that if you're just one guy, you're doing it by yourself, I think there's deals out there for you. You just got to go find them. I think you go drive for dollars and you call them, because some of the bigger companies, I mean, even myself included, like I don't really drive for dollars as much as I'd like to. And I think if you have all that time on your hands where this is what you're going to be pursuing, then go drive, go find the crappiest house in these neighborhoods and call the owners.
Yeah.
Because the bigger companies are doing like what we're doing. We've got inbound channels, we've got texting, we've got these things. If you don't have the resources, if you've got a car or you got 2 feet, go walk around or drive around and find the crappiest properties and call them. That's how we did our first few deals too. A lot of those ones that first year were just like, oh, I remember this house over on this street because we grew up there.
Yeah.
And so, is that one still a piece of crap? Yep, it is. Let's call this guy. And you just do that. I think that's a great way to get started and build some confidence. Then from there, you can decide what you want to do.
That resonates with me a lot because I was living in San Diego when I started wholesaling virtually in Boise. So I never did it in San Diego.
Right.
But I did do some driving for dollars in San Diego. I just I never actually called on anybody. And driving for dollars, I probably did it like a couple weeks, like an hour here or there, just driving around.
Right.
And the crazy thing about it was it just blew my mind how many homes are in distress when you're actually looking for it. If you go out into any neighborhood in the US, even expensive ones, like I was in Encinitas, California, where the median sales price is like 1.5 million and a shack is worth over $1 million. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm looking and I'm like, there's a home like every 10 to 15 houses is disheveled. And it just blew my mind. And I think that helped solidify for me that there are so many deals out there. It's just your own mental barrier that to tell yourself like there's not enough deals out there.
Yeah. And if honestly, like even if we are talking about Boise, like I think I could still be successful in Boise if I really wanted to. I think sometimes, like you said, you hit this mental block where you're just like, oh, there's not enough houses and there's not enough leads and there's plenty. At any given point, I think they say like 7 to 10% of the market is in distress.
Yeah.
At any given point, anywhere in the U.S. So, just do the math. If you've got, 1 million homes in your area, 7 to 10% are in distress. So go find them. And at least one of those people will sell to you, I'm sure. Even if you suck at selling, you probably get one of them for sure.
Totally. And you and I have talked about this too in our one-on-one sessions, but I think it really depends on what are you trying to accomplish as a whole, right? Because if you are looking for more deals and a smaller deal size, but just to get that level of consistency and money coming in the door at a rapid rate, going to the Midwest or going to some of these lower price point markets makes a lot of sense because you can
Mhm.
do more deals. They will be at a lower deal size, but you will get consistency. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're going to one of these major markets, you might only get maybe a deal a month, maybe a deal every other month. And for that 1 to 2 months that you're not getting a deal,
It's scary.
it's really scary because
Yeah.
you've spent all this money on marketing and you're just like working what you have and you're like kind of hoping that things are going to fall into place. And when it does come in, it's a huge rip,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But I think it's
Mentally, it's difficult.
totally. And I think that going into a place where the barrier to entry is just a little bit lower and you can just stack wins and build up cash reserves is
Mhm.
always a good thing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was the thought process with myself too, going to Ohio and Northern Kentucky. And I think that you'll find oftentimes too in these lower price markets, you're just going to have an easier time with everything. I think the negotiations are easier. I mean, you're still obviously kind of selling yourself, doing the sales side of things, but you'll find that some of these people are so distressed that it just doesn't matter. Like I said, you could be awful at selling. It doesn't matter. If you just go talk to enough people, eventually one will pan out. And from there you'll learn. And you're learning every time you suck and you fail. It's just like you're going to learn more failing than you are winning. But it is important mentally to get those wins still. And, financially, of course, too, you can't be doing it for free.
What
So,
what's the biggest difference between somebody like a seller, your average avatar of a seller in Idaho versus someone in Ohio?
oh gosh. Yeah.
You're allowed to cuss, by the way.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep it PG for my grandma or my mom, whoever ends up watching this. But no, I think a lot of Idaho sellers are much more confrontational.
Yeah.
I just think in general, and I don't know if that's a measure of like, I don't know what it is, but there's definitely a level of aggression that is much higher here than anywhere else that I've done deals, anywhere else. And I've done deals in a few different states, but I think for whatever reason, they'll get upset with you much faster and much easier here. I don't know why. And I've dealt with plenty of wonderful sellers here too, who are very nice people, but dealt with a much higher rate of like
Sure.
pissed off and mean people here. And then in Ohio, just a lot more laid back for the most part. Again, I don't know what's in the water here, but yeah, people just get really upset. So, and I mean, people can go listen to some of your calls that you've
Yeah.
had come in. I mean, it's yeah, they'll say the darndest things.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
You're not the first person that said that. I don't know if I'm not an Idaho native, so
Sure.
it's kind of,
Well, I'm not either.
yeah. So it's like, there's a sense of pride though, for
Yeah.
sure, that runs really deep
Yeah.
about being an Idaho native. And I think that comes into play a little bit.
I think people get really pissed off because they like to blame the housing crisis and economic position that everybody's in. It's not like everybody's feeling the crunch of inflation and all the stuff going on, but they like to blame it on investors. And it's like they don't separate. Hey, there's a difference between like big hedge funds that are buying up like all the properties as
Yeah.
opposed to like we're just flipping properties, making affordable housing or trying to,
Yeah.
and houses that you can live in and are not condemned. I don't think we're doing anybody a disservice by flipping those. Yeah, so I don't know. It's interesting. I agree though. It's something about being like an Idaho native. They get real like pensive about that. So
Spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
So when did you and I meet along this journey?
We met once a while ago. We didn't talk for very long. I'm not a very social person, so that's part of it. And I wasn't, especially then too. Like we shook hands and that was it. Like I don't even think we talked. It was like, "Hi, how are you?" And I think that probably would have been. It was one of like the first like public meetups you were at,
Okay.
or something like that. And then we kind of would chat over Facebook here and there, or like Instagram or whatever. And I had approached you on a couple different occasions about like potentially being coached or something like that. I just kind of wasn't sure what I wanted to do either. And then, yeah, we finally actually like hung out that after we had started the actual coaching. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know but I think the first time would have been like 19, 20,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
Awesome. And what do you think has been the biggest, I guess, advantage or catalyst for you in joining the Real Freedom community and the coaching program?
I think because I mean, I'm a solopreneur at this point, and it's a little difficult because there's not a lot of people out there that have kept their operations small. A lot of guys scaled up, like, even some scaled too high and had to scale back. I always kept things pretty close to the vest, and like I just didn't really want to expand in that way. I like doing a lot of the stuff myself. And I think once I started doing stuff with you, it was surprising, but good to know that there's opportunities to expand in a way where you still kind of maintain control on what's going on.
Yes.
But that was always my fear, was like relinquishing control, or like just because I knew that somebody else wouldn't do it as good as I do.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing it for so long. And so joining the community was just a wake up call to like, hey, if you want to grow, you're going to have to relinquish, even if it's just a little bit of that control. And, then the systems, just like all the systems that we have in place now have been so much more organized and beneficial. Like I wasn't even using a CRM before. So it was all up here and on my phone, which is not a positive way to do things. So yeah, organizationally, and then just the systems and all that has been super positive.
Love it, man. And I think too, you have changed in your mindset a bit on like what is possible.
Right.
And automating the lead generation, I think, is where most people like get the biggest.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest lever they can pull.
Yeah. Well, I think my time where I'm actively working has been cut like in half. As far as like, because I'm not sitting there responding to text messages all day long. Cause that was my biggest gripe before, was that I'd spend 8 to 10 hours a day, every single day, just responding to texts. So when you have a system in place where that can be automated, it makes your life so much easier. And in all reality, you're not really having to be that guy who has to sift through all the crap all day, where you've got these people being, saying nasty stuff, because people will get real ballsy over text too. But they'll say the nastiest stuff. You don't have to sit there and deal with that. So you just are really talking to the people who said, yes, I want to sell, or I would consider it, or whatever. And you're having those conversations.
Yeah. We call it a shit shield.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
For sure. But I think it actually takes taking a step back, relinquishing some of that control to really feel. Because like if we're an entrepreneur, we're doers. Like we want to go accomplish stuff and do hard things.
Yeah.
And that brings us energy, right? To go do hard things. But there comes a point when you take a step back and you realize
you're not really in it anymore.
Right.
Like, or at least as much.
Yeah. But, and also like that did kind of take an emotional toll on me when people would cuss me out over text.
Oh, yeah.
I was just completely desensitized to it because I was talking to 300 of these people a day. Right.
Yeah, no, that's been huge for me. That's been a major change. It's almost bad, because I am, like I said, I am a doer. I like to like be in it and be doing it 24/7. And there are work days where, just because the lead gen's a little slow that day or whatever, where I'm just kind of sitting there twiddling my thumbs after doing my follow-ups. I'm just sitting there, and it's been a mental positive because I'm not sitting there and dealing with that crap 24/7, which is what I was doing before. And I'm not being barraged by phone calls when people are pissed off. It's all going through that system. So that's, I 100% agree. I think you don't realize how negative it is on you especially after 5+ years of doing it. It takes its toll. But once you step back, you go, I feel like take a breath here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
As well.
Right.
So
for sure.
Like step one, when people join the community, is always like, what's your superpower? Let's get you working on that. And let's automate your lead generation and some of the systems for you so that you can focus on closing deals, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Or talking to buyers or whatever those higher revenue generating tasks are, instead of just trying to focus on generating all the leads yourself. And so the most powerful thing that you can do if you're a solopreneur or you're just getting started in wholesaling and you've done a couple deals is to get a virtual assistant to do lead generation for you and make sure you have the systems to match, right? And then it becomes more fun because you're only talking to the more motivated people. You've got a filter, and then you can move on to the next thing. And even now, every time when you bring on an acquisitions person, when you bring on an integrator, when you bring on like a dispo person or another salesperson or a lead manager, the hardest part is there's a period of like 6 months or longer where you are paying this new person to watch them fail. And they are messing up your leads and your deals that you could have closed. And not only are you not getting paid from that deal, but you're paying them to go mess up.
Yeah.
And it's just like the biggest melting thing
Yeah.
because it's really hard and really frustrating.
Right.
But once you get over that cusp
Yeah.
and you see how powerful it is of like, oh, with even a small team of like 2 or 3 people, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 4 or 5.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, well, we're about to go through that, so we'll see in July. But yeah, because we're bringing on an acquisition guy, and I mean that's gonna be tough for me because I'm a little controlling. I'll admit it. So especially with the business, so it's gonna be tough to take a step back, just realize, hey, he's gonna screw up. It's part of it. It's how it's gonna go.
Yeah, and it's all a growth pattern, right? Like it's
Mhm.
learning new skills. I had 0 experience whatsoever on hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And so like of course I sucked at hiring and
Yeah.
I hired some really bad people
Right.
because I just didn't know what the heck I was doing. It's just like no different than when you're calling on sellers for the first time. You don't
Mhm.
know what the questions to ask, you don't know what to look for, you don't know what a motivated seller sounds like.
Right.
And so there's all levels to that. What do you think was the mindset shift for you where you were like, I've been successful as a solopreneur, but I think I do need to level up. I do think I need to join a community and a program to get to the next level.
To be honest, I'm a much more like statistical person than I am emotional when it comes to those types of decisions. Obviously, fear plays a part in that, and that is an emotion. But
Yep.
for the most part, I can just take a look at everything overall and say, okay, am I happy with where I'm at? Yes, but can I do more? And that was the question. That's the question that I'm always asking myself to like self gauge. What am I doing? What could I do more of? What am I not doing enough of? And yeah, I felt like I was spinning my wheels a little bit for the last 2 years where it was like I was capped at a certain dollar amount because I was doing everything. And at some point, everyone will reach that. I think everyone has different levels of where that's going to be for sure. And I think there's, some other factors that play in that too. But for the most part, no matter what, you will be capped at some point because you can only do so much yourself. And so I'd been a part of a few other communities.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Well, other gurus or whatever you want to call them. So those, yeah, I had been in a few throughout my career that kind of burned me because they just were not as helpful as I would have liked them to be for what they costed. And so I wasn't necessarily skeptical of you, but I was unsure of if I wanted to take that gamble again. And I stayed that way for too long. And I just was like, you know what? I just need to do it. And if it sucks, then whatever, we'll figure it out. And so that's what I did. I just said, I need to actually take this big boy step and just do it. And I did. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. And man, you have completely just kicked ass. Like from the moment we started working together, like your deal flow is consistent. I think the sky's the limit for you, really. Like there's no reason that you can't be doing 5 to 10 deals a month here in short order. And you're already close to that already.
Yeah, we're getting there. I think the acquisition manager will help a ton. Brandon, if you're watching this, but yeah, I think that's going to be a big step in the right direction. Just because even though like we've obviously brought like your systems and stuff in place, it is still mostly me as far as closing the deals, dispoing, all that stuff. So having somebody else who can help on acquiring stuff, that's gonna help big time. So.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Here's something that grinds my gears. Why are there so many gurus in our space or social media people that try to sell us things and then don't deliver? Like, what is it about? I'm trying to put my finger on it because there's so many people that I hear from that come to me, or I hear from other people that are like, hey, I signed up for this. I spent all this money and now I
don't know,
anything.
man. I think a big part of it is that real estate is very attractive as a concept. So like you hear real estate and people are like, oh, fancy, and at least I was, especially when I started, I was like, yeah, I'm excited, but I think it's just because it's such an attractive thing that everyone would love to do. Like if you ask most people, would you like to be in real estate? Like I feel like most people would say, yeah, they'd like to do it in some capacity, whether that's rentals or being a broker or a realtor or whatever, because real estate is a very stable thing, in my opinion, as far as like a job or like income producing thing, because everyone always needs somewhere to live.
Right.
So yeah, I think that whenever you have a large amount of people doing something and there's money involved, there's always going to be shitty people on the other side of that. I don't always think that all of these people are necessarily bad people. I think that they just overpromise and then underdeliver because all of their focus is either in marketing themselves as a guru and like pretending to do all these deals, or their focus is in actually doing them. And there's very few people who can kind of walk that line and do both. So there's a lot of gurus who are just not doing deals and pretend that they are, and they're going to sell you their course. There's a lot of gurus that are doing a ton of deals and their kind of members suffer because they're actually doing it. And then there's the people like you who can kind of walk in the middle where you're still like able to sell the coaching in a sense, but also you're doing deals. Your company performs and you can perform on the side of like actually showing me how to do it. So yeah, I think that there's just too many people that don't know what they're doing and try to act like they do.
Yeah, I think the access to information too is, and social media is a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Like anybody can get on TikTok now and talk about wholesaling,
Sure,
and
right.
innovations, and
It's almost like if you were around, well, of course you were around, but if you paid attention when like drop shipping was a big thing.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know, and it still is, like people still do it, but it's like those crazes. I think it's one of those things that will pass eventually where there's not going to be as many people talking about it or promoting it or whatever, because eventually the well dries up. Not everyone can do this. I think anybody can if they put in the right amount of effort and they actually go after it, but not everybody will do it. So it'll get to a point where it's like, you know, with drop shipping, everyone just says, oh, if you're selling a drop shipping course, you're a scammer. Like, cause that's
Right.
what it got to eventually, you know? I'm sure there were some legit guys or in there somewhere, but there was just too much crap to sift through. You couldn't find the legit ones.
yeah. I'm thinking of the right place to enter in a crypto day trader quote here.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That one's even worse. NFTs or whatever the
Yeah.
hell. So
I love it. So what do you think has been the biggest reason for your success in, you know, after you switched to Ohio and like in the last 6 months? Maybe it's a talk track that you're using, maybe it's a newfound confidence. What's really working lately? A lead source?
yeah, I think a big, like one of the biggest parts of it was of course, like, you know, the community and working with you, because it helped to give me some direction as far as like, okay, I'm kind of just spinning here. What am I doing? I know I can make money doing this, but am I going to start fully treating this like a business, or am I going to, you know, just kind of keep halfway doing this like a solopreneur? And then as far as like what's working now, I would say the biggest thing was spending money on leads, doing the pay per click or pay per lead. That's been huge for me, because I think before I've tried it multiple times in the past, and every time I'd buy like 3 or 4 leads and they'd all suck. And I'd just be like, oh, this doesn't work.
Yep.
And it's just not how it works. Like you're going to spend a couple grand before you even get somebody to answer the phone sometimes. So pay per lead can just be very hit or miss, but when it does hit, it's very, very good, because it is an inbound, hot, motivated lead almost every time. They may not like disclose it up front, like I said, but if you're, you know, experienced and you pay attention, like you'll pick up on it. But that's been huge for me. So it's obviously expensive, but it does work.
Awesome. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Let's do a deal deep dive. You have any recent deals that you've done that you want to talk through? What was the lead source?
Sure.
What was the situation of the seller?
Yeah,
we start with that.
Yeah, this is I guess like a testament to follow up. So we started with Leadzolo not too long ago.
Paper lead channel.
Yep. And at your behest. And I was a little upset at first. I was like, this thing sucks. I got like 20 leads and nobody answered the phone. I had one guy answer the phone and his phone died. Like it was disconnected after our first call.
Of course.
And I was like, you know, so I was a little upset. And obviously it's not your fault, but I was just like, man, I'm going to shut this down. This sucks.
Yeah.
Because I think it's about $200 a lead.
Right.
So I don't know how much money that is, 20. Yeah. But I had these 2 leads in there that I, you know, had never gotten a hold of, and I kept calling them. The other ones I discounted as dead for either they were like retail or, you know, whatever. They just didn't fit our criteria. And we had these 2 in here that I'd never talked to. I'll just focus on the one. But eventually he finally texted me back and was just like, hey, sorry, I've been dealing with family stuff. Let me know when you can talk.
Right.
And so we set a call. This was on the weekend. And I set a call it was like Saturday night. He was off work. So I called him. It was just a really solid conversation. Just built really good rapport. Like everything was sharp. And we talked for probably about 30 minutes, made him a offer sight unseen just based off the information. It's a super easy house to work with in Ohio. They're ranch style. They're single story. They're on a slab. So there's no basement. You know, they really can only have so much work, even if they're terrible.
Yeah. What was his pain?
His pain was retirement from work and just everything. So he's kind of just selling assets off. Actually, not a ton of motivation, but knowing the property condition was kind of another one.
Okay.
So he's had a renter in there for like 10 years and it was rented before that as well. He's owned it for like 30 or 40 years. And so, yeah, kind of just tired landlord,
Yep.
just kind of sick of it, but tired enough to go fill out a form online. So
Of
that's,
course.
but yeah, so I made him a ballpark offer as far as like where I thought I would land. He kind of gave me a number, and we were a little ways apart. I got him down pretty substantially, and we just inked it up the next day. So he was a little uncomfortable with DocuSign, so my partners over there drove over and gave him a contract in person. And then we saw the property about a week later and assigned it, and it was a $40,000 assignment fee on that.
Woo!
one. So
40 grand. Nice, man.
yeah,
Way to go.
yeah, it'd be a good one.
All from follow-up.
Yep.
That's why
yeah.
we say the fortune is in the follow-up, right?
No, yeah, seriously. I mean, I would say over 90% of my deals are from just following up. It's very rare the first conversation is going to be
What percent?
probably 90%.
Dude, that's
All
amazing.
Follow up, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that speaks to really like, yes, leads have a cost, but
Mhm.
how are you working them? Are you just contacting them once or twice?
Yeah, you call them a couple times, then you're like, they don't work, and I'm done. Yeah, no, you got to keep going. So,
Yeah. And I think the reason too, we were speaking about this before the show, is especially like with the pay-per lead channels, and we even see this with Google pay-per-click, or any inbound lead channel, people are at their like emotional breaking point when they first fill out the form. They're at like something's just
going on.
happened.
Yeah.
And so that's why if we call them and contact them within the first 3 minutes, it gives us the highest likelihood of getting the lead.
Yeah.
For us in our business, if we don't get a hold of them within the first 3 minutes, our chances of getting that appointment drop by 50%. And it's because they go to bed or they go
They think on it. Yep.
Exactly. They go to the grocery store, life gets busy or whatever, and all of a sudden the emotion comes down. And so the pain comes down a little bit.
Sure.
And that's the reason so much of this is a timing thing. And
Mhm.
so it doesn't surprise me to hear that so many of your deals come from follow-up, because that's where the gold is.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say, and even with our inbound, like you said, if you don't get a hold of them the first like couple minutes that it comes through, I think we're about the same way. Like if we don't get a hold of them, like it'll be weeks out from then that we actually end up having that conversation.
Yeah.
Because everyone's busy, everyone's got stuff going on, and so we try to understand that, but we like be respectful of that. But we're also like, we're gonna talk to you. We're gonna keep calling you, texting you, whatever. And we'll pretty much keep doing that until they tell us F off or they have a conversation with us, because they filled out that form for a reason. So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
See if we're a good fit,
Yeah. And I think too, you're an overly humble guy. So you did brush over, I got him down on his price quite a bit, right?
Sure.
That takes an immense amount of sales skills. What were some of the ways with that lead that you got the number down?
Yeah. So
What was he asking for, first of all?
I want to say he was looking for about $100,000
Okay.
for that one. And he kind of indicated in that for when I asked, because he wouldn't give me a price at first either.
Okay.
He kind of was like, "Oh, make me an offer, make me an offer." And that's
Assertive
pretty,
type.
yeah, pretty common. We get that where they would rather us give a number first because they think they're going to leave money on the table.
Yep.
And almost every time when they say that, I go, "You're not going to like my first offer," because it just, it's kind of jokingly too. I get them to laugh a little bit, and I just say like, "Look, I'm an investor. Of course, I'm doing this to make money. If I could give you a ton of money for this property and still be able to profit, I would. But I have to be able to, make money on this." And so I just told him, if I can pay cash, I can close quickly, all on your timeline. What's the best price you can give me? And he said, "Oh, might be able to do 80." And so he already came down 20,000.
Just from one question.
Right.
But because you said it with confidence,
Yeah.
and you said, what's the best price that you can give me?
Mhm.
Because you were confident enough to be transparent in that I'm an investor. I have to be able to make a profit. I'm not going to lowball you. I don't want to insult you. It's so disarming
Mhm.
for them to then chase you if they are a motivated seller.
Yeah, well, and I think that's an indicator for me too. If they like just will not give me a price, most of the time they're not as motivated as they're letting on. It means that they're going to be pretty price motivated.
Yep.
Because it means the reason they're not giving you numbers is because they know it's high.
Yeah.
That's why. But like for us, when they give a number either right away or after a couple pushes, we're like, okay, there's something there. But so he was at 80,000, and I think we got him at what did we get him at? Maybe we did get him at 80.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Yeah, I'm trying to drawing a little bit of a blank here, but yeah, we got him down from what he was, initially at, just by
Okay.
asking questions and having that conversation.
And then you wholesaled it, right?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was a wholesale. So, and it was tenant occupied, so that's why we didn't really get to see it at first, and we just had the price conversation kind of up front. Whenever I know that the viewing is going to be a little ways out, I'd like to at least get them, if anything, a ballpark offer if they don't have a ton of information as far as condition. But he was pretty descriptive as far as what it needed and what was going on.
Okay.
So it made it pretty easy for us to like pinpoint a price. And just based on where we were at, I knew we'd be able to make a deal at that price, even if it needed pretty much everything. So
Love it. And how'd you find the buyer?
I think he was already on my list,
Okay.
but probably originally through Facebook.
Okay.
So Facebook groups.
Yeah. That's a really good tip, guys, is Facebook groups are really powerful for finding buyers. If you don't have buyers,
Mhm.
right? Facebook Marketplace, real estate investor groups, they all hang out and live there, right?
Mhm. Yeah. We post, even though we have a list where we're mailing out or emailing out our deals, we will post in all the groups still, at least until we build up our list a little bit more substantially there. But yeah, we've probably gotten over 200 buyers just from Facebook groups. So
Love it. Love it. Love it. So that's it for the deep dive. Tell me, Chase, what's your vision for the next year? What are some of your goals?
yeah, I would like to definitely increase revenue overall year over year. That's kind of the biggest one, is to show some, semblance of growth there,
Yeah.
because that's been a sticking point for me. And then, start to focus on some of the longer term stuff too. And the, not giving into that gratification of like buying stuff or whatever, instead saving that money and putting it towards rental properties. And that's kind of a focus of mine, as well as just, training up my guy that's going to be joining the team, getting him to where he's really crushing it sales wise. Yeah, we've got a couple of goals there, some tangibles and intangibles.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Any advice that you want to give the listeners of somebody that's maybe apprehensive to either get started or seek some kind of coaching and mentorship? I know there's a lot of fear around like signing up with the wrong person, right?
Yeah, I think if you can find somebody like Ryan, who I know in real life, as opposed to just some guru on the internet, that's a big difference. I think trust but verify. That's what I live by. It's what my pops taught me. So, you can trust anything that somebody says, but verify it. Find out if they're legit or not. And the way you do that is, Ryan showed me, pretty much opened the door to the insides of your business to be like, this is what we're doing. I'm just putting it out there for you. And, I can see him doing things over the years too. I watched you grow and, build your team. And I saw you doing developments and adding doors to your portfolio and bringing people onto your team. So it's like, if you can see that with your own two eyes, as opposed to them just saying, hey, I do 10 deals a month and make $7 million a year and right. Anybody could say that. I can get on here and say all that too. But I'm honest. I don't,
Yeah.
So I could get on here and talk about it all and lie. But in all reality, if you just pay attention to what somebody's doing, it'll become pretty clear if they're legit or not. So
Love it, man. What's one parting piece of wisdom that people can use to crush their fear?
just do it, man. Like
Yeah.
Nike. Yeah, just get out there and do it. If you're scared, you're apprehensive, let that fear kind of push you and just focus on the end goal. Whatever you want to accomplish, in whether it be in life or in this business, just go after it. Focus on the end goal. Don't pay attention to what you're scared of. Just do it. So
Love it, man. Well, it was great to have you on the show. And like I said before, I think you're headed for massive, massive things. And this is the fun part because it gets
Yeah.
really exciting from here.
Yeah.
So we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.